Welcome into the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So we have some seriously scorching summer heat on the way for Thursday and Friday, and actually today too for northern Maine is really heating up today. Northern Maine going to be around 90 today. Everyone else will be kind of a moderation day. They'll be in the 80s. But yeah, Thursday and Friday are going to be scorching hot, especially for the very start of June. Much of New England's averages are in the low to mid 70s this time of year. Daily records could topple across New England on Thursday and Friday, and even Wednesday too in northern Maine again. Concord, Augusta, Fort Kent, Van Buren, Holton, Millinocket on Thursday. On Friday, Hartford, Springfield, Worcester, and Pittsfield could all be looking at record high temperatures, daily record high temperatures. And on top of that, record warm lows are possible across northern Maine on Friday. Northern Maine will not be heating up on Friday due to a cold front. We'll talk about that in a minute, but northern Maine could see some record low, some. It's starting to get a little confusing now. Record warm low temperatures, so morning lows. And, I looked at the climatology, and, there's some record warm lows that could be shattered in northern Maine. And Van Buren, I think the forecast morning low is like 9-10 degrees above their current daily record warm low. That is a mouthful. All of New England, basically all of New England, is going to be scorching. But if you do want to beat the heat, if you're free and you want to get away from the heat, head to the coast. It is going to be noticeably cooler, even significantly cooler, across coastal areas on Thursday and Friday as a strong sea breeze comes in. There will not be a strong wind with this heat, so that will allow the sea breeze to really cool down the coastline. The forecast temperatures for the coast have trended up. They've trended warmer, but still not nearly as hot as inland. So this is all being set up by a deep ridge of high pressure. This is very similar. It's a very similar setup to what we had in the middle of April when, remember, we shattered daily record highs in the middle of April. I believe it was Hartford they came close to setting a new monthly high for April that time. This is a very similar setup. It's just, it's not really supposed to happen in April. It's more common now as we get into meteorological summer. So the high pressure is part of the Rex block that remains in place. I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Blocking patterns break down very slowly. They're very stubborn, and this one is no exception. So this Rex block that's been giving us the nice, mild, and now hot temperatures is remaining in place for this week. So high pressure has dominated for the last week. Again, part of this Rex block, it gets blocked in just, blocking patterns in New England typically block in low pressures. This one blocked in a high pressure for us. If I want to say block again, there you go. There's one more for you. So another strong cold front. We've had several strong cold fronts this spring. I mentioned it in last week's episode, but another strong cold front is going to drop through New England on Friday and bring an abrupt end to the heat. The front will pop a line of showers and thunderstorms, mainly across northern New England, again, as has been the case with these cold fronts, is the line kind of fizzles out as you get into southern New England, and that will be the case again this time. Severe thunderstorms not expected. Just not a very good setup for severe thunderstorms, but regular standard thunderstorms, yes. So, as I said, northern Maine will not be able to get into the heat on Friday. It will be cooler for Maine because of this cold front. Specifically, it's another backdoor cold front. So everyone in the region is going to have 2 hot days. Northern Maine, it's Wednesday and Thursday, and everyone else, basically, it's going to be Thursday and Friday. So the cold front will set up much, much cooler temperatures on Saturday. Some areas, their high for Saturday will be nearly 30 degrees lower than their high was on Friday. In some places, will be dropping from way above average right down to below average. Although much of the region is going to be seasonable. Again, the big drop in temperatures will bring just seasonable weather back into the picture for much of New England, but eastern New England, especially near the coast, it will drop it actually below average slightly. So next week for New England is looking very different than this week that we are having. It is going to be cooler and it might be unsettled. This weekend will be the start of a cooler trend again. Saturday, the temperatures will drop off. And that is not just for a couple of days. The cooler trend is continuing. The NOAA temperature outlook does favor below average temperatures in the 8 to 14 day outlook. So the high pressure domination exits. That's what I wrote here in my notes. So the high pressure will break down. We are going to get out of the high pressure, and that will allow potentially some areas of low pressure to come through New England and bring us some showery, unsettled weather. At this time, there's no washouts in the forecast for next week, but there are indications of some unsettled weather. There's really no big warm-ups or cool-downs in the picture at this time. Again, it's going to be cooler, but cooler in this case means seasonable, low to mid-70s for most. Of course, with this Weather Wednesday coming out on a Wednesday, next week is a week plus out, so there is, of course, room for some wiggle in the forecast, but those are the general trends as of right now. Some of the things that you can expect, mainly because it does look like the jet stream is going to flip. Right now, there's a ridge in the east and a trough in the west. It looks like next week a ridge will build back in the west, which means there'll be a trough in the east. So, coming into this hurricane season, which officially starts tomorrow, New England has gone 31 years without a hurricane landfall. Well, it'll be 32 in August. I know it says 32 on the chart. It has been nearly 32 years here in late May. This is by far the second longest streak without a hurricane landfall in New England, dating back to 1851, which is when the Atlantic Hurricane Database dates back to. The third longest streak is about half of this, just 16 years. This occurred from 1969 to 1985. That was Gerda in 69 and Gloria in 85. Of course, Bob struck New England as a Category 2 in 1991. Since then, there have been 7 tropical storm landfalls, but no hurricanes. The streak nearly ended in 2021. Henri was forecast to come in as a Category 1, but it ended up coming in with winds of 60 miles an hour. So Category 1 hurricane winds start at 74 miles an hour, so it came in as a rather high-end tropical storm. There's no doubt New England is in a hurricane drought right now. It's unlikely to end this year. A hurricane to make landfall in New England is unlikely in any given year, really statistically. But this year, it's even less likely due to the El Nino conditions that are expected to develop in time for the peak of the season. El Nino conditions typically rip storms apart due to a high amount of shear. And that has happened already this year. A storm off the southeast coast could have developed, but there was just too much shear for it to do so. Of course, there's never a 0% chance of a hurricane landfall in New England, but it is lower than usual this year. I realize I'm probably locking in a hurricane landfall by saying that, basically, right, like the announcer's curse in sports. But we'll see. The longest hurricane drought ever in New England spanned 42 years, from 1896 to 1938. That time frame saw much less overall activity in New England than the current drought we are in, 1991 to present. Only 4 low-end tropical storms made landfall in that 42 years, as opposed to 7 landfalls in 31 years in the current drought. Only 2 systems are classified as having a high impact from 1896 to 1938. whereas 8 systems have had a high impact since 1991, including an extreme impact in Irene in 2011, the flooding that caused in Vermont, among the worst floods ever in the history of that state, and that state has had some really bad floods in their history. And Irene actually did not even make landfall in New England, interestingly enough. The shortest time between landfalls is actually just 11 days during the dreadful 1954 season, which saw Category 3 Carol in late August, followed by Category 2 Edna less than 2 weeks later make landfall in New England. June skiing is a go. That is a quote from Killington's website from yesterday. So they are going to open for a bonus day tomorrow, June 1st. The snowpack is looking a little rough, but I mean, May 31st, why would it be looking good? They said they do anticipate top to bottom runs, at least in the morning, which is very impressive. So unless something truly miraculous happens, next week will be the final resort roundup of the season, as Killington makes it to June 2 years in a row, despite some uncooperative weather the past 2 winters, and especially this past winter until, of course, March. So 2 weeks, or 2 years in a row, they have managed to push into June. Very impressive on their part. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Weather Wednesday podcast here at New England Storm Center. So as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Keep it right here. Keep it at newenglandstormcenter.com, and you will hear from me again next Wednesday.